My parents made me their personal ATM since I was 12, then left me their bankrupt business in their will, so I exposed their decades of fraud. 5 years later, my mom's working at a grocery store and sending letters from the address. She once said she was too good for. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. When my dad hurt his back at work when I was 12, my parents made it clear I needed to step up. My younger brother Marcus was only 8, so obviously he couldn't help. By 16, I was handing over every paycheck to keep our lights on. My parents would hug me and tell me how proud they were of their little provider. Those hugs only came on payday, though. When I turned 19, I got accepted to an out-of-state college with a partial scholarship. I just needed my parents to sign the financial aid paperwork. They refused. They said the family needed me here working. Marcus got into the same college 4 years later, and they signed his papers immediately. They even took out loans for him while I was working 2 jobs to pay our rent. The thing that really trapped me happened when I was 32. I tried to reduce my monthly payments to them from $3,500 to $2,000 because my fiance Jordan and I wanted to start saving for our wedding. My parents completely lost it. My mom called my boss and told him I was mentally unstable and stealing from my elderly parents. She cried about how I was abusing them financially. I almost lost my senior management position. HR got involved and I had to show bank statements to prove I was actually giving them money, not taking it. It was humiliating. Last year I tried again. I told them I needed to skip just 1 month because Jordan needed surgery. They showed up at my office and made such a scene that security had to escort them out. My biggest client witnessed the whole thing and dropped our company. I lost a $50,000 commission. So when they told me they were updating their will after mom had a mild stroke, I saw it as my light at the end of the tunnel. They had always promised me everything would be mine someday since I had sacrificed so much. Jordan and I always planned to move into their home that my dad built on a huge piece of land. It was our dream home. Jordan and I had just found out we needed IVF to have kids, but I told them we could start treatment after the will was finalized, and I was free. Sunday dinner came around, and my parents were practically glowing. Marcus was there, which should have been my first red flag since he only visited when he needed money. Dad cleared his throat and announced they had finished with the lawyer. Everything goes to Marcus, he said simply. The house, the cars, the investments, all of it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then Dad said, and you'll get the family business. The family business was Dad's auto shop that had been closed for 5 years. It had $180,000 in debt plus environmental violations from oil disposal and 3 years of back taxes. This is a joke, right? I said. Marcus couldn't hide his smirk. I'll take good care of the house, bro. You're so good with money, you'll turn it around, my mom said. Jordan spoke up. That shop will bankrupt us. My mom's face hardened. Besides, Marcus will give us grandchildren. You failed us there too. The final blow came when my dad added, of course we'll still need our monthly payments while you get the shop sorted out. I stood up and walked out while my dad yelled about ungrateful children. In the car, Jordan showed me something on her phone. She had been documenting everything. $412,000 over 15 years. Every payment, every receipt, every bank transfer. She had also been recording my parents' threats and had video of the office incident. I've been preparing, Jordan said. I knew this day would come. My phone buzzed. It was Diane, my parents' paralegal friend. The shop has liens. Don't sign anything. Call me now. I researched the shop that night. It would need $300,000 just to break even. The environmental cleanup alone would cost $100,000. It wasn't an inheritance. It was a prison designed to keep me paying for them forever. I went back the next day with a folder of documents. I've learned from my past mistakes, I said, placing everything on the table. Here's a cease and desist letter from my lawyer. My mom started crying. How will we survive? The bank is closed. Permanently, I said. I pulled out another document. I've already notified the creditors that I won't be accepting your business. Marcus went pale. But you have to take the shop. It's family legacy. Your inheritance, your problem, I said. Hope the house sells for enough to cover it. My dad stood up red-faced. We'll destroy you. We'll call your job again. Try it, I said calmly. I have lawyers this time. I walked out as my parents turned on Marcus, demanding to know how he planned to pay for the shop debts. 3 weeks later, Diane called me urgently. She said she had something important to tell me about my grandmother's estate. Your grandmother left you a trust, she said. Your parents hid it from you. Turns out my parents had been taking money from me for longer than I thought. Diane asked me to meet her at her office the next morning. I brought Jordan with me because I needed someone there who could think clearly. My hands were shaking when Diane pulled out a thick folder. She explained that my grandmother had set up a trust fund for me when I was born. It was supposed to be mine when I turned 25. The trust had started with $150,000 and should have grown significantly over the years. Diane showed me the original documents with my grandmother's signature. I recognized her handwriting from birthday cards she used to send me. Then she showed me withdrawal records starting from when I turned 25. Every single withdrawal had my signature on it, except I had never signed anything. I had never even known this trust existed. The signatures were close to mine, but not quite right. Someone had been practicing my signature and withdrawing money for years. The total stolen was over $200,000. I felt sick to my stomach. Jordan grabbed my hand under the table. Diane pulled out more papers. She had bank records showing where the money went. Every withdrawal went straight into my parents' account. They had been stealing from me while I was giving them everything I earned. I hired a forensic accountant that same day. His name was Arthur, and he specialized in family financial fraud. He told me this kind of thing was more common than people realized. Parents stealing from their kids' inheritances happened all the time. Arthur spent 2 weeks going through everything. He found more than just the trust theft. My parents had opened credit cards in my name when I was 16. They'd maxed them out and never paid them. That explained why I could never get approved for anything when I was younger. I thought I was just bad with money. Turns out my credit was destroyed before I even became an adult. Arthur also found something else. The house my parents lived in wasn't actually in their name. It was in mine. They had used money from my trust to buy it, but needed my signature since I was over 18 by then. So they forged it. According to the paperwork, I owned the house free and clear. I had been paying rent on a house I already owned. The irony made me laugh bitterly. The forensic accounting revealed even more. My parents had been claiming me as a dependent on their taxes, even though I hadn't lived with them since I was 20. They were getting tax breaks while I was paying higher taxes as a single filer. They had also been collecting disability payments for my dad's back injury while he was working under the table doing construction. Everything was documented. Every lie, every theft, every forged signature. Arthur compiled it all into a report that was over 100 pages long. I took it to the police. The detective assigned to my case was named Isabella. She said white-collar crime and families was tricky, but the evidence was overwhelming. She would need to interview my parents and Marcus. She warned me things might get ugly. I told her things were already ugly. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Then Marcus showed up at my apartment. He was sweating and looked panicked. He banged on my door until I opened it. He pushed past me into my living room, his eyes wild with fear. He said Mom and Dad were freaking out because the police had called. He demanded to know what I had done. I told him I was just getting back what was mine. Marcus laughed and said I was being dramatic as always. Then he saw the forensic report on my coffee table. His face went white when he started reading it. He asked if I was really going to send our parents to jail. I told him they had sent themselves to jail when they decided to steal from me. Marcus tried to grab the report, but Jordan stepped between us. She told him to leave before she called the police. Marcus left, but not before telling me I was destroying our family. I told him our parents had already done that. As he stormed out, I noticed his hands were shaking just like mine had been at Diane's office. For the first time in years, Marcus looked scared. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. My mom had posted on Facebook about how her ungrateful daughter was trying to destroy the family. She wrote this long sob story about how they had sacrificed everything for me, and now I was abandoning them in their old age. My aunts and uncles started calling me. My cousin Maria texted asking if I had really called the police on my own parents. I didn't respond to any of them. Jordan deleted Facebook from my phone and told me to focus on what mattered. Detective Isabella called that afternoon. She had interviewed my parents and they denied everything. They claimed I had given them permission to access the trust. They said I had asked them to handle my finances because I was too busy with work. They even produced a letter supposedly from me authorizing them to make withdrawals. The letter was typed and had a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. Isabella said she was sending it to a handwriting expert. She also said my parents had hired hired a lawyer. His name was Donald, and he was known for taking messy family cases. 2 days later, I got a call from my boss. My parents had contacted him again. This time, they told him I was having a mental breakdown and needed help. They said I was making false accusations because I was off my medication. I had never been on medication in my life. My boss asked if everything was okay. I had to sit down and explain the whole situation. He listened quietly, then told me to take a few days off to handle things. He said he understood, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. That night, someone slashed my tires. All 4 of them. The security camera in the parking garage had mysteriously stopped working that day. I knew it was Marcus, but I couldn't prove it. Jordan wanted to stay in a hotel, but I refused to be driven from my own home. We installed new locks and a doorbell camera instead. The next week, my parents' lawyer sent me a letter. They were offering to settle. They would admit to taking $50,000 from the trust and pay it back over 10 years. In exchange, I would drop all criminal charges and continue paying them $2,000 a month. I laughed when I read it. They were still trying to keep me under their control. I told my lawyer to reject the offer. Things escalated quickly after that. My dad showed up at Jordan's work. He told her coworkers that she was manipulating me and turning me against my family. He said Jordan was after my money, which was ironic since I didn't have any money because they had stolen it all. Jordan's boss had to threaten to call security before my dad would leave. Jordan came home crying that day. She said maybe we should just accept the settlement and move on. I told her no. They had taken enough from us. Detective Isabella called with an update. The handwriting expert confirmed the signatures were forged. She also found something interesting. The withdrawals from the trust had stopped 6 months ago, right around the time my mom had her stroke. Isabella thought they had been planning to frame me for elder abuse and claim I had been stealing from them. The stroke had messed up their timeline. Now they were scrambling. My parents tried a new tactic. They started calling my extended family with sob stories. They told my Aunt Emily that I had cut them off financially and they couldn't afford mom's medication. They told my Uncle Billy that I was trying to steal their house. They even called Jordan's parents and told them their daughter was ruining our family. Jordan's mom called us concerned. Jordan had to spend an hour explaining everything. Her parents were horrified when they heard the truth. Arthur, the forensic accountant, found more evidence. My parents had been using my social security number for years. They had opened utility accounts in my name, then never paid them. They had taken out payday loans using my information. The total damage to my credit was staggering. It would take years to fix everything. Arthur said he had seen cases like this before, but rarely this extensive. He asked if I wanted him to keep digging. I told him yes. I needed to know everything. Marcus tried calling me repeatedly. I didn't answer. He left voicemails saying we needed to talk. He said mom was making herself sick with worry. He said dad's back was acting up from the stress. He said I was calling them. The last voicemail was different. He sounded hammered. He admitted he knew about the trust. He said mom and dad had promised to share the money with him if he kept quiet. He said he needed his inheritance now because he had debts. He begged me to drop everything. I saved that voicemail. Detective Isabella arrested my parents on a Tuesday morning. She called to warn me it was happening. She said they would likely be released on bail, but the charges were serious. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. The list was long. I sat in my office staring at the wall. I couldn't focus on work. I kept thinking about all those years of giving them everything while they were stealing from me behind my back. My mom called from jail. I don't know why I answered. She was crying hysterically. She said I was a monster. She said she wished she had never had me. She said Marcus was the only child who loved them. She said I would regret this when they were dead. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Jordan held me while I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was angry. So very angry. They made bail that afternoon. Marcus had put up his car as collateral. I found out later he had borrowed money from loan sharks to pay for their lawyer. He was in deep trouble, but that was his choice. He had chosen them over the truth, just like always. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings. My lawyer was building a civil case while the prosecutor handled the criminal charges. We had to document everything. Every forged signature, every stolen payment, every fraudulent account. The stack of evidence grew higher every day. My parents' lawyer kept trying to negotiate. The offers got slightly better each time, but they were still insulting. They wanted to admit to minimal wrongdoing and pay back a fraction of what they stole. They also wanted me to keep supporting them financially. It was delusional. My dad tried to ambush me at the grocery store. I was shopping for dinner when he appeared at the end of the aisle. He looked older, grayer. He started talking about when I was little, how he used to take me fishing, how proud he was when I got my first job. He said we could work this out as a family. I told him we weren't a family. We were victim and criminal. He got angry then. His face turned red like it always did. He said I owed them for raising me. I told him children don't owe their parents for doing the bare minimum. He raised his hand like he was going to hit me. Another shopper, a woman named Melissa, intervened. She asked if I needed help. My dad backed off and left. I finished shopping with shaking hands. My mom tried emotional manipulation. She sent me old photos of us together. Pictures from Christmas, birthdays, family vacations. Each photo came with a message about how much she loved me, how she had only wanted what was best for me, how the trust money had been used for family expenses. I didn't respond. Jordan suggested blocking her number, but I wanted to keep the messages as evidence of harassment. Marcus's desperation grew. The loan sharks wanted their money. He couldn't pay because all his money was tied up in our parents' legal fees. He started showing up at my apartment at all hours, banging on the door, demanding money. The doorbell camera caught everything. He looked terrible. Thin, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. Part of me felt sorry for him. Then I remembered he had known about the theft and said nothing. He had chosen money over his sister. Detective Isabella called with news. They had found more victims. My parents had done this before. My dad's elderly aunt had complained years ago that money was missing from her accounts. She had suspected my parents but couldn't prove it. She had died before anything came of it. There were also questions about my grandmother's death. She had changed her will shortly before dying, leaving everything to my parents instead of dividing it between them and her other children. The signature looked suspicious. They were investigating, though too much time had passed to bring charges. My workplace situation deteriorated. Despite my boss saying he understood, the constant drama was affecting my performance. Clients asked questions about the family visiting my office. Coworkers whispered about the police involvement. I overheard someone saying I must have done something to deserve it. No one understood how parents could steal from their own child, so I must be lying. I started looking for a new job. Jordan was my rock through everything. She handled the lawyers when I couldn't. She documented every incident. She kept me eating when I forgot. She reminded me why we were fighting. We deserved to start our family without my parents' shadow hanging over us. We deserved to use our money for IVF instead of supporting thieves. We deserved peace. The forensic evidence kept mounting. Arthur found investment accounts my parents had opened in my name. They had been playing the stock market with my money and losing. The losses were significant. He also found property they had bought using funds from my trust. Not just the house, but vacant land and a rental property. Everything was in my name, but I had never seen a penny of profit. The rental income went straight to their accounts. My parents' lawyer made another offer. This time they admitted to taking $150,000. They offered to sign over the house and rental property to settle the debt. They would also agree to no contact if I dropped the criminal charges. My lawyer said it was progress, but still not enough. The actual theft was over $400,000 when you counted everything, plus the damage to my credit and career. We rejected the offer. That's when things got dangerous. I started getting anonymous threats, text messages saying I would regret this, emails describing what would happen if I didn't drop the charges. I gave everything to Detective Isabella. She increased patrols around my apartment. She said my parents denied sending the threats, but the language was similar to their other messages. She believed it was them or someone acting on their behalf. One night, Jordan and I came home to find our door open. Nothing was stolen, but things were moved around. Pictures turned face down, drawers opened, papers scattered. It was a message. They could get to us whenever they wanted. We called the police and made a report. The officer said without evidence of forced entry, there wasn't much they could do. We stayed in a hotel that night. I met with Detective Isabella the next day. She said the criminal case was solid, but these intimidation tactics were concerning. She suggested I consider a restraining order. The problem was proving my parents were behind it. Marcus had alibis for everything. My parents claimed they were too distraught to leave their house. Without concrete proof, we were stuck. My cousin Maria reached out. She said she had been thinking about everything. She remembered odd things things from when we were kids. How my grandmother always gave me birthday money, but it always disappeared. How my parents would say they were putting it in savings for me. How they did the same thing to her brother when his dad died and left him money. She said she believed me now. It was a small victory, but it meant something. The prosecutor called with an update. My parents' lawyer was pushing for a plea deal. They would plead guilty to lesser charges and avoid jail time. Instead, they would get probation and have to pay restitution. The prosecutor said it was my choice, but trials were risky. Juries sometimes sympathized with elderly parents even when they were guilty. I said I needed to think about it. Jordan and I talked for hours that night. Part of me wanted them in jail. They'd stolen years of my life, not just money, but part of me just wanted it over. The stress was calling us. We hadn't started IVF because we couldn't handle more emotional turmoil. We were living in fear, always looking over our shoulders. Maybe probation and restitution were enough. Maybe we could finally move forward. I was leaning toward accepting the plea deal when Arthur called. He'd found something big. My parents had life insurance policies on me. Multiple policies totaling over $1 million. They had been paying the premiums with money from my trust. I was horrified. Why did they need life insurance on me? Arthur said it was common in financial abuse cases. If something happened to me, they would get a huge payout. It cast the recent threats in a new terrifying light. I called Detective Isabella immediately. She took the information seriously. Life insurance policies combined with threats and intimidation painted a disturbing picture. She said she would look into it further. She also strongly suggested I not be alone anywhere. Jordan and I started varying our routines. We took different routes to work, shopped at different stores, avoided predictable patterns. My parents must have sensed things were shifting against them. Their lawyer reached out with a new offer. Full restitution of $400,000, transfer of all property in my name, and they would plead guilty to all charges. In exchange, they wanted the minimum sentence possible. My lawyer said it was the best offer we would get. The prosecutor agreed. With good behavior, they might only serve a year or two. It wasn't enough for what they had done, but it was something. I struggled with the decision. These people had raised me, even if they had done it badly. They were still my parents. But then I thought about all the opportunities they had stolen, the education I never got, the wedding Jordan and I had to postpone, the children we couldn't afford to have yet. They'd stolen my past and tried to steal my future. They deserved whatever punishment they got. Before I could decide, Marcus made his move. He showed up at my office with two men I didn't recognize. Large men with hard faces. Security stopped them in the lobby, but Marcus screamed up at my window. He said I had ruined his life. He said the family business debts were being called in. He said people were coming for him because of me. He said if I didn't fix this, he would fix me. Security escorted them out, but the threat was clear. I called Detective Isabella about Marcus's visit. She pulled security footage and identified one of the men with Marcus. He had a record for assault and extortion. He worked for the loan sharks Marcus had borrowed from. Now I understood. Marcus was in danger, and he was desperate enough to put me in danger too. Isabella said she would have Marcus brought in for questioning. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how it had come to this. My own family threatening me, stalking me, trying to destroy me. All because I had finally said no. All because I had demanded what was mine. Jordan held me as I cried. Not from sadness, but from exhaustion. I was so tired of being afraid, so tired of fighting, but I couldn't give up now. Not when we were so close. The next morning brought chaos. Marcus had been arrested for making terroristic threats. The loan sharks he owed had also been picked up on unrelated charges. My parents' house had been searched and police found evidence of their crimes. Forged documents, fake IDs in my name, records of all their schemes. They had kept everything thinking they would never be caught. Their arrogance was their downfall. My mom called from her lawyer's office. She was calmer than I had ever heard her. She said she would accept the plea deal. She would plead guilty and serve her time, but she had one condition. She wanted to see me one last time, to explain why they had done it. I didn't owe her anything, but I was curious. After all these years, I wanted to understand. Jordan didn't want me to go, but I needed closure. We met at the lawyer's office with everyone present. My mom looked small and old. She started talking about her childhood, how poor they had been, how she had sworn her children would never struggle like she did. She said the trust money was supposed to be for the family. She said I was selfish for wanting it all for myself. She said she had only taken what I would have wasted anyway. Even facing prison, she couldn't admit she was wrong. She still saw me as a resource to be exploited, not a daughter to be loved. My dad spoke next. He talked about his injury and how it had ruined his dreams. He said I had been his retirement plan. He had raised me to take care of them, and I had betrayed that purpose. He said Marcus understood family loyalty. He said I was corrupted by Jordan and her selfish modern ideas. He actually believed his own lies. In his mind, stealing from me was justified because I existed to serve them. I sat there listening to their excuses and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. These people were strangers to me. They had never been real parents. Real parents don't steal from their children. Real parents don't destroy their children's future. Real parents love unconditionally, not just on payday. I stood up to leave. My mom asked if I had anything to say. I told her I forgave them. Not for their sake, but for mine. I wouldn't carry their poison anymore. As I walked out, my dad called after me. He said when they got out of prison, they would need somewhere to stay. He actually thought I would take them in after everything. I didn't even turn around. I just kept walking. Jordan was waiting in the car. She asked how it went. I told her I was free. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. The legal process moved quickly after that. My parents pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and forgery. They were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison with 5 years probation after. They had to pay full restitution, though I knew I would never see all of it. Marcus pled guilty to making threats and got 6 months plus anger management. The loan sharks he owed were a different problem, but that wasn't my concern anymore. The house was officially transferred to my name. Jordan and I went to see it after my parents were taken to prison. It was strange being there without them. Everything looked the same but felt different. This was supposed to be our dream home, but now it just felt tainted. We decided to sell it. Use the money for a fresh start somewhere new. Somewhere without memories of manipulation and lies. My credit slowly improved as Arthur helped me dispute all the fraudulent accounts. My employer was understanding once the truth came out in court. Some coworkers apologized for doubting me. Others still whispered, but I didn't care anymore. I had survived the worst my family could do. Office gossip couldn't touch me. I even got promoted when my boss realized how well I had handled everything while dealing with such personal turmoil. The house sold faster than we expected. A young family bought it and seemed excited about the big yard for their kids. I signed the papers without feeling anything. Just another transaction. The money went straight into a new account at a different bank, one my parents had never touched. Jordan and I found a nice apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. No memories attached. 6 months into their sentence, I got a letter from my mom. The prison return address made my stomach turn. Jordan wanted to throw it away unopened, but I was curious. She wrote about how hard prison was, how the other inmates were mean to her, how the food was terrible and she missed her own bed. Not one word of apology, just complaints and hints that I should put money in her commissary account. I threw it in the trash. Marcus got out first. His 6 months were up and he immediately started calling. I had changed my number, but he found the new one somehow. He left voicemail saying he was sorry. He said he had learned his lesson. He said he just needed a little help getting back on his feet. Maybe a place to stay for a few weeks. Maybe a small loan. The same old Marcus. I blocked the number. Arthur finished unwinding all the financial fraud. The final tally was staggering. Between the trust theft, credit fraud, and tax evasion, my parents had stolen close to $500,000 over 20 years. And that didn't count the opportunities lost or the emotional damage. He helped me file insurance claims and recover what we could. Some debts were too old to dispute, but we cleared most of them. Jordan and I finally started IVF treatments. The first round didn't take. The second round ended in miscarriage. We were devastated, but kept trying. The clinic was expensive, but for the first time, we could actually afford it. No more sending thousands to my parents every month. That money could go toward our future instead of feeding their greed. My extended family slowly came around. Aunt Emily called to apologize for believing my parents' lies. She said she should have known something was wrong when they kept asking everyone for money while I was supposedly taking care of them. Uncle Billy sent a card saying he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even some cousins reached out with support. Not everyone believed me, but enough did. Detective Detective Isabella called with an update on the investigation into my grandmother's death. They couldn't prove anything criminal, but the will changes were definitely suspicious. The lawyer who had done them had since been disbarred for other shady dealings. She said my parents were lucky too much time had passed, otherwise they might have faced additional charges. I got a new job with better pay and less drama. Nobody there knew about my family situation, and I kept it that way. It was nice being judged on my work instead of my personal life. My new boss, a woman named Jacqueline, became something of a mentor. She taught me to negotiate for myself instead of always putting others first. Prison changed my parents. When they got out after 18 months, they looked older and smaller. They moved in with Marcus, who was living in a tiny apartment. I heard through family gossip that they were struggling. Good. They needed to learn what it felt like to actually be poor, instead of just claiming poverty while stealing from me. They tried contacting me when they got out. Showed up at my old apartment, but we had already moved. Went to my old job, but I wasn't there anymore. They even tried going through Jordan's parents, but her family stood firm. Eventually, they gave up, or so I thought. The third round of IVF worked. Jordan was pregnant with twins. We were over the moon, but also terrified. 2 babies meant double everything. We started preparing, buying cribs and car seats, setting up college funds that no one could touch but us. These kids would have what I never did. Security and parents who put them first. That's when my parents made one last play. They sued me. Said the house sale was illegal because they were under duress when they signed it over. Said I had manipulated them into confessing. Their new lawyer, some ambulance chaser named Alan, filed a civil suit demanding the house money back plus damages. It was desperate and pathetic, but I still had to respond. My lawyer laughed when he saw the filing, said they had no case. The criminal convictions made it clear who the real criminals were. Plus, they had pled guilty. Hard to claim innocence after that, but we still had to go through the motions. More legal fees, more stress while Jordan was pregnant. The civil case was dismissed quickly. The judge basically told their lawyer to stop wasting the court's time. My parents had admitted guilt in criminal court. They couldn't now claim they were innocent in civil court. Their lawyer tried to appeal, but no one would take the case. Even ambulance chasers have standards, apparently. Marcus reached out during this time, not to apologize, but to blame me. Said our parents were broken because of me. Said they cried every night. Said mom's health was failing, and it was my fault. I didn't respond, but I did some checking. Found out mom was working at a grocery store. Same kind of job I had done at 16 to support them. Karma really did exist. Jordan went into labor 2 weeks early. I was in a meeting when she called. I drove like a maniac to the hospital. 8 hours later, we had 2 perfect babies, a boy and a girl. We named them after Jordan's grandparents, not mine. These kids would have a fresh start with no toxic legacy attached to their names. My parents found out about the twins somehow. They sent a card to the hospital. Inside was a note about how grandparents had rights, how they would take me to court for visitation, how I couldn't keep their grandchildren from them. I gave the card to my lawyer. He sent them a cease and desist letter. They had no rights to anything of mine. Not my money, not my time, and definitely not my children. We moved again just to be safe. Different city this time. Fresh start completely. I worked remotely, so the job wasn't an issue. Jordan found a new position easily. We bought a small house in a good school district. Nothing fancy like my parents' place, but it was perfect for us. A real home built on love, not lies. The twins grew fast. Every milestone felt like a victory. First smiles, first steps, first words. My parents missed it all because of their choices. Sometimes I felt sad about that. My kids would never know their grandparents. But then I remembered what those grandparents had done. Better know grandparents than toxic ones. 2 years passed peacefully. We settled into routine. Work, babies, normal life. I even made mom friends who didn't know my history. We had play dates and coffee without drama. It was everything I had wanted, but thought I'd never have. Quiet happiness without constant crisis. Then Diane called. My parents' old paralegal friend who had helped me discover the trust. She was retiring and cleaning out old files. She found something she thought I should see. Documents from when I was born. Apparently my grandmother had set up education funds for all grandchildren. Not just the trust. Separate accounts specifically for college. My parents had drained those too. Forged my signature to close the accounts when I turned 18. Used the money for Marcus's college while telling me I couldn't afford school. The betrayal still stung even after everything else. But Diane had good news. The bank had kept records. The fraud was documented. I could add it to the restitution order. My lawyer filed the additional claims. My parents' probation officer was not happy they had hidden more stolen assets. The judge added another year of probation and increased the restitution amount. My parents would be paying me back until they died. Still not enough for what they stole, but something. Marcus disappeared around this time. The family gossip network said he had skipped town owing money to the wrong people. My parents were evicted from his apartment when he stopped paying rent. They ended up in a shelter briefly before finding subsidized senior housing. The same kind of place they had always said they were too good for. I felt nothing when I heard. No satisfaction, but no pity either. They had made their choices. Every theft, every lie, every manipulation had led them here. They had 2 children who could have loved them. Instead, they had 2 victims who wanted nothing to do with them. They had chosen money over family and ended up with neither. The twins started preschool. Jordan and I both cried at drop-off. They were so confident and happy. No anxiety about money, no fear of disappointment, just normal kids living normal lives. Everything I had worked for, everything my parents had tried to steal. But we had won in the end. My credit score finally recovered fully. It had taken 5 years, but all the fraud was cleared. I even qualified for a business loan. Started my own consulting firm. Used everything I had learned about financial fraud to help other victims. Turns out there were a lot of us. Adult children discovering their parents had stolen their identities and futures. One client's story hit close to home. Her name was Melissa, same as the woman who had helped me at the grocery store. Her parents had done almost exactly what mine did. Stolen her inheritance, ruined her credit, demanded monthly payments while hiding assets. I helped her uncover it all, helped her find justice. It felt good turning my pain into purpose. The business grew. I hired Arthur as a contractor. We made a good team. He found the fraud, and I helped clients process the emotional side. Because that was the hardest part. Not the money, but the betrayal. Learning the people who should protect you had systematically destroyed you instead. It took time to heal from that. Jordan suggested I write about our experience. Start a blog or something. Help others recognize the signs. I thought about it, but wasn't ready. Maybe someday. For now, I was focused on moving forward. Building the life my parents had tried to deny me. Being the parent they never were. We had one more scare when the twins were 5. My dad had a heart attack. Marcus surfaced long enough to call me. Said dad was dying and wanted to see me. Said I would regret not saying goodbye. I asked if dad had said he was sorry. Marcus went quiet, then admitted no. Dad still thought I owed him. I wished Marcus well and hung up. Dad survived, but barely. Needed constant care after. Mom couldn't provide it while working. They ended up in separate facilities. Mom in senior housing, dad in a nursing home. The state paid because they had no assets. All their schemes, and they ended up exactly where they had always feared. Dependent on strangers because their children wouldn't help. I know some people judge me. Think I'm heartless for not helping them. Those people didn't live my life. Didn't have their future stolen by the people who were supposed to love them most. They don't understand that no contact isn't cruelty. It's self-defense. The only way to stop the cycle. The twins are 7 now. They ask about grandparents sometimes. We tell them age-appropriate truths. Some people aren't safe to be around. Even family. It's sad, but protecting them is more important than maintaining appearances. They understand in their own way. Kids are smarter than we think. Jordan and I are trying for another baby. IVF again, but we can afford it now. My parents' monthly payments actually cover the treatments. Ironic that the money they stole is helping create the grandchildren they'll never meet. But that's their loss. They chose money over family and lost both. Sometimes I dream about them. Not nightmares anymore, just sad dreams. What could have been if they had been different people? If they had loved me for me instead of what I could provide. But you can't change people. You can only change how you respond to them. I chose freedom. Looking back, I'm grateful in a weird way. Their betrayal taught me strength. Their lies taught me to value truth. Their conditional love taught me to love unconditionally. I'm a better parent because I know what not to do. My kids will never doubt they're loved. Never feel like walking ATMS. Never have to buy affection with paychecks. The trust money is long gone, but I've built something better. A life life free from manipulation. A family based on love, not transactions. True security that no one can steal. My parents gave me nothing but trauma and debt, but from that, nothing I built everything, and that's the best revenge of all.
I came face to face with my best friend 10 years after he stabbed me in the back when I was already at rock bottom, and what he told me made me hate him even more now than I did back then. My wife came to me 10 years ago, the morning of our anniversary, telling me she doesn't love me anymore and wants a divorce. I thought it was a prank at first, but it wasn't. She just fell out of love and needed to move on with her life. She still had the audacity to accept the diamond necklace I'd bought as a present though. Either way, it was crushing. But believe it or not, the hardest part wasn't parting ways with her. It was parting ways with my 6-year-old daughter. I loved her with all my heart, but the judge didn't see it that way. And that was mainly because of what my best friend did. I still remember that day in court so vividly. My best friend, the guy I'd known since high school, took the stand out of nowhere. I remember feeling relieved at first because surely he would back me up. But instead, he looked me dead in the eyes and started crying, corroborating my wife's story and telling everyone how he watched me violently shake my daughter during one of my rage episodes. My jaw dropped. I looked at him like it was a bad dream. He started showing doctored texts and video clips of me and my daughter, our happy moments twisted into painting me out as an abusive monster. I looked over at my wife, who was putting on crocodile tears, as if every word he was saying was true. The judge stared at me with disgust. My lawyer wasn't ready for it. Even he looked at me like I was a liar when I told him this was fake. That day, I lost everything. No visitation, no phone calls, nothing. When I stepped outside the courtroom, I could barely breathe. I gathered my things and went home, proceeding to drown my sorrows in alcohol. Once hammered, I called my best friend, slurring my speech and demanding to know why he'd destroyed my life. But all I got back was laughter, cold and smug. He told me flat out, "I've wanted your wife to be mine for so long. You know how sick I can get when I'm in love." Then my ex-wife took the phone, her voice dripping with cruelty. "He'll be a better father to her than you ever were. You'll never see your daughter again." I started crying over the phone, begging them to tell me they were joking. Instead, my ex poured salt into my wound. She told me that they have been sleeping together behind my back for 2 years, planning exactly how to take my daughter from me. The whole thing was an orchestrated lie to ruin my life. I was devastated. I should have confronted them, but I didn't. I moved states, started over. But I never gave up hope. I kept sending birthday cards, letters, and gifts to my daughter, hoping she'd know her dad loves her, but I never heard a word. All I knew for certain was that my ex was lying to her about how I used to do things to her when she was little. My ex told me so herself. I was almost ready to face the fact she'd never really know me. But then, out of nowhere, 10 years later, a call came that shattered everything. A hospital from my old hometown said my daughter had been in a car accident. They told me my name was listed as her emergency contact. My heart nearly exploded. Why was I her emergency contact? But I didn't ask. I just jumped into my car, hands trembling the whole drive. When I walked into that hospital waiting room, my ex-wife and former best friend sat stunned, clearly never expecting to see me again. The air was thick with awkwardness. My ex-wife quietly got up and moved toward the doctors, presumably to warn them, leaving me and him alone. I didn't say a word, and that's when he started speaking. At first, he seemed emotional, almost like he might apologize. But instead, the things he said made my blood boil. He admitted to me with a cruel tone that he never gave my daughter any of my letters or gifts I sent. He laughed about how he convinced her I'd abandoned her. But then, just as I thought it couldn't get worse, he changed gears. A fake sorrow began dripping from his every word, trying to make himself sound like the victim. "I'll admit it," he said, putting on this righteous act. "I neglected her. Kids are a lot of work, man. You know how it is. I'm not proud of this, but there were times she needed a good wallop. Honestly, I'm doing you a favor letting you back in her life now. She's a mess. You should thank me." I felt myself about to explode. Every part of me wanted to swing at him right there. But before I could respond, a small, weak voice called out from behind the slightly open curtain nearby. My daughter, awake, staring at us both, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. I ran over, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. She looked so small in that hospital bed, her face pale and bruised from the accident. I rushed to her side, my legs barely holding me up. Her eyes darted between me and my former best friend, confusion and fear mixing in her expression. "Dad?" she whispered, and that single word nearly broke me. After 10 years, she still remembered. My ex-wife burst through the curtain, her face red with panic. She grabbed a nurse's arm, pointing at me while speaking in urgent whispers. The nurse glanced my way, then shook her head and walked off. My ex's plan, whatever it was, wasn't working. "Get away from her," my ex hissed, positioning herself between me and my daughter. "You have no right to be here. His name is on my emergency contact list," my daughter said weakly. "I put it there myself." The room went silent. My ex-wife's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My former best friend stood up, his fake sympathy replaced with something darker. "Sweetheart, you're confused from the accident," he said, moving toward the bed. "You don't know what you're saying." "Don't call me sweetheart," she snapped, then winced from the effort. "And I know exactly what I'm saying." A doctor entered, clipboard in hand. He looked at the crowded room and frowned. "I'm going to need everyone except immediate family to step outside." "He's not family," my ex said quickly, pointing at me. "He lost all parental rights 10 years ago." The doctor turned to my daughter. "Miss, you're 16 now. You can decide who stays." She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. I saw myself in her eyes, the same green color, the same slight upturn at the corners. "He stays," she said. "They go." My ex-wife grabbed the doctor's arm. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. He used to hurt her when she was little. We have court documents." "Then call security," the doctor said, pulling free. "But right now, my patient has made her wishes clear." My former best friend stepped forward, his voice taking on that fake concerned tone again. "Doc, I think she might have a head injury. She's not thinking straight." "Her scans came back clear," the doctor replied. "Now please step outside so I can examine my patient." They left reluctantly, my ex shooting daggers at me with her eyes. My former best friend whispered something to her as they walked out, and she nodded grimly. Once alone with my daughter and the doctor, I pulled a chair close to her bed. The doctor checked her vitals, asked her some questions about pain levels, then excused himself to get her medication. "Why did you list me?" I asked when we were alone. She picked at the hospital blanket, avoiding my eyes. "I found some old photos in the attic last year. You and me at the park, at the beach, reading bedtime stories. You looked happy." We both did. My throat tightened. I was. Those were the best days of my life. They told me those photos were fake, that you paid someone to doctor them to try to get custody. She finally met my eyes. But I could tell they were real. The way you looked at me in those pictures. Nobody can fake that. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a worn photo I'd carried for 10 years. It showed her on my shoulders at the county fair, both of us laughing at something off camera. "This one's my favorite," I said, handing it to her. She studied it, tears forming in her eyes. "I remember this day. You won me that giant teddy bear. Mr. Snuffles," I said, smiling despite everything. "You remember his name?" "I remember everything, sweetheart. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone I missed. I sent you cards and letters for all of them." Her face darkened. "I never got them." "I know," I said quietly. "He just told me." She crushed the blanket in her fists. "They said you abandoned me, that you moved away and started a new family, that you didn't want me anymore. I never remarried, never had other kids. I couldn't replace you." The door burst open. My ex-wife stood there with 2 security guards. "That's him," she said, pointing at me. "He's violating a restraining order." One guard stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some ID." I handed over my driver's license, my hands steady despite the anger boiling inside me. The guard radioed someone, then waited. After a few minutes, his radio crackled. "There's no active restraining order on file," the voice said. My ex's face went white. "That's impossible. Check again." "Ma'am, we've checked twice. There's no current order against this man." She spun on her heel and stormed out. The guards apologized and left. My daughter watched the whole thing with wide eyes. "She lied about that too?" she asked. Before I could answer, my former best friend appeared in the doorway. He'd clearly been listening from the hall. "Princess, don't let him manipulate you. You know what he did." "No," she said firmly. "I know what you told me he did. There's a difference." His mask slipped for just a second, and I saw the real him underneath. The calculating, cruel man who'd stolen my life. Then the fake concern was back. "You're upset. That's understandable. But think about who's been there for you all these years. Who drove you to school? Who helped with homework? Who hit me when mom wasn't looking?" She interrupted. The room went cold. He stepped back like she'd slapped him. "Princess, I never— Last month, you backhanded me because I talked back. 2 months before that, you shoved me into a wall because I came home late. Should I keep going?" I stood up, my fists clenched. Every protective instinct I'd suppressed for 10 years came roaring back. But my daughter grabbed my hand. "Don't," she said. "He's not worth it." My former best friend's face cycled through emotions. Shock, anger, then back to that fake sadness. "I was just trying to discipline you. You've been so difficult lately." "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Now." He looked between us, then turned and left without another word. I sat back down, still holding my daughter's hand. "How long?" I asked. "Since I was 8, she said quietly. At first it was just yelling, then pushing. The hitting started when I turned 13. I wanted to hunt him down, to make him pay for every mark he'd left on my child. But she needed me here more than I needed revenge." "I'm so sorry," I said. "I should have fought harder. I should have found a way." "How?" "They told everyone you were dangerous. They had evidence, witnesses. Even I believed it for years." The doctor returned with her medication. As he administered it, I noticed my daughter getting drowsy. Before she fell asleep, I pulled out a business card and wrote my cell number on the back. "This is my number," I said, tucking it into her hand. "Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything at all." She nodded, her eyes already closing. "Don't leave yet," she mumbled. "I won't," I promised. I sat there for hours, watching her sleep. My ex and former best friend came and went, trying different tactics. They brought in other family members to guilt me into leaving. They tried to get different doctors to kick me out. Nothing worked. As visiting hours ended, a nurse finally made me leave. My daughter was still asleep, but I left a note on her bedside table. "I'll be back tomorrow. Love, Dad." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. I extended my leave from work and found a cheap motel near the hospital. Every day, I visited during allowed hours. My ex and former best friend were always there, watching, waiting for me to slip up. They tried everything. My ex would loudly discuss my violent past within earshot of nurses. My former best friend would make snide comments about me abandoning my daughter. They even brought in Catherine, an old mutual friend, to testify about what a terrible person I was. But Catherine took one look at me and froze. "Oh my God," she said. "They told me you were in prison." That opened a floodgate. Suddenly, she was questioning everything they'd told her. When she left that day, she hugged me and whispered, "I'm so sorry I believed them." My daughter watched it all with sharp eyes. She was getting stronger, asking more questions. I answered honestly, even when it hurt. I told her about the divorce, the trial, the decade of silence. I showed her copies of every letter I'd sent, every card, every gift receipt. I kept copies, I explained, hoping that someday I could prove I never stopped trying. She cried then, really cried. Not the quiet tears from before, but deep, body-shaking sobs. I held her while she let out 10 years of lies and manipulation. My ex tried one last desperate move. She arrived with a lawyer, claiming I was emotionally abusing my daughter by confusing her with lies. The lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman with cold eyes, tried to serve me with papers, but my daughter spoke up. "I want my own lawyer," she said clearly. "I'm 16. I have rights." The hospital social worker, who'd been monitoring the situation, nodded approvingly. "I can help arrange that," she said. My ex's lawyer left quickly after that, sensing a losing battle. The day my daughter was discharged, she had a choice to make. The social worker had arranged temporary housing options, while the legal situation was sorted out. She could go home with her mother, stay with a relative, or enter a group home temporarily. "What about with my dad?" she asked. The social worker looked uncertain, given the past custody arrangement. "That was based on lies," my daughter said firmly. "I want to see the real court documents, all of them." It took another week, but we got them. Reading through the transcripts was painful. My former best friend's testimony was detailed, convincing, and completely fabricated. But what hurt most was seeing how thoroughly I'd been outmaneuvered. "This is insane," Jane, Catherine said, reading over my shoulder. She'd become an unexpected ally, helping us navigate the legal system. I remember that day he claimed you shook her. You were at my birthday party, 3 hours away. We started building our case slowly, carefully. My daughter began texting me from a secret phone she'd bought with saved allowance money. Late-night conversations revealed more abuse, more neglect, more lies than I'd imagined. One night, she sent a photo of bruises on her arm. From last week, she wrote. He said I was being disrespectful. I saved everything, building a file that would destroy them if needed, but I had to be careful. One wrong move, and they'd find a way to cut me off again. My former best friend must have sensed something was changing. He started his own campaign, sending me threatening messages from anonymous numbers. Stay away from my daughter, one read. You'll regret coming back, said another. I kept those too. Then he escalated. My daughter told me he'd shown her proof that I was dangerous. Photos of women with bruised faces, claiming I'd hurt them. Police reports with my name on them. She was smart enough to look closely and see they were forgeries, but it rattled her. What if there's something real mixed in? She asked during one of our secret meetings at a coffee shop. What if you did hurt someone and don't remember? I understood her fear. 10 years of gaslighting doesn't disappear overnight. Let's hire a private investigator, I suggested. Have them do a complete background check on me and on them. She agreed. The investigator's report was illuminating. My record was clean, except for the custody battle. But my former best friend? 2 domestic violence complaints from previous girlfriends, both dropped after they mysteriously left town. Financial irregularities at his job. A sealed juvenile record that our investigator couldn't access but confirmed existed. He's been planning this for years, the investigator told us. The paper trail shows he was researching custody law months before your divorce. We were building our case when disaster nearly struck. I came back to my motel room one evening to find the door ajar. Inside, police were searching my room. Someone had reported seeing me with stolen goods. They found planted evidence, jewelry I'd never seen before, electronics with serial numbers reported stolen. I was arrested on the spot, my heart sinking as I realized how this would look. But I'd learned to be paranoid. The motel had security cameras, and I'd been recording myself entering and leaving every day. The timestamp showed I was at the hospital when the theft supposedly occurred. Someone's setting me up, I told the detective. Please, check the footage. They did. The video showed my former best friend entering my room with a key he'd somehow obtained. He spent 10 minutes inside, then left carrying a bag. The charges were dropped immediately. You might want to file charges of your own, the detective suggested. I did. The community meeting where everything came to a head wasn't planned. It was a school event my daughter invited me to, her first public acknowledgement of our relationship. My ex and former best friend were there, of course, glaring daggers at me. During a break, he confronted me by the refreshment table. You think you're clever, he hissed, but she'll see through you eventually. They always do. Like your ex-girlfriend saw through you? I replied calmly. His face went red. People were starting to notice our tense conversation. My daughter appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. Everything okay, Dad? She asked loudly. The word Dad rippled through the crowd. People who'd known our story, or thought they did, started whispering. My ex rushed over. Sweetheart, come here. Don't stand near him. No, my daughter said simply. What happened next was pure impulse. My former best friend grabbed my daughter's arm, trying to pull her away. She cried out in pain. He'd grabbed right where her bruises were. Let go of her, I said, my voice deadly calm. He squeezed harder. She's my daughter. I raised her. You abused her, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. And I can prove it. The room went silent. He released her arm, his face cycling through emotions. You're lying, just like you always lie. Catherine stepped out of the crowd. No, he's not. I've seen the evidence. Photos, medical records, text messages. You've been hurting this girl for years. Other people started speaking up. A neighbor mentioned hearing yelling from their house. A teacher talked about bruises she'd noticed. My daughter's friend admitted she'd been sworn to secrecy about the abuse. My former best friend looked around wildly, realizing he was losing control. This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer. Good idea, I said, pulling out my phone. Because I have a recording of you admitting to stealing my daughter's letters. Would you like me to play it? He lunged at me then, in front of everyone. I sidestepped, and he crashed into the refreshment table. Punch went everywhere. He scrambled up, covered in red liquid, looking deranged. You ruined everything, he screamed. She was supposed to be mine. The life was supposed to be mine. My ex tried damage control. He's not himself. The stress of raising a difficult teenager. Difficult, my daughter interrupted. I'm difficult because I don't like being hit? The crowd turned on them then. Questions flew, accusations followed. Someone called the police. In the chaos, my former best friend tried to run, but several fathers from the community blocked his path. When the police arrived, they took statements from everyone. My daughter spoke clearly, bravely, about years of abuse. I provided my evidence. Catherine testified about the lies she'd been told. My former best friend was arrested that night. As they led him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, he mouthed. But it was. The custody battle that followed was swift. With mountains of evidence and my daughter's own testimony, the judge had no choice. Full custody was granted to me, with supervised visitation for my ex, if my daughter wanted it. She didn't. We moved into a small apartment together, starting over after a decade apart. It wasn't easy. She had nightmares, trust issues, anger at the lost years, but we worked through it together, with therapy and patience and love. 6 months later, Catherine called with news. My former best friend had been convicted of child abuse and attempted frame-up. He got 5 years in prison and would have to register as a child abuser when he got out. It's not enough, I said. No, Catherine agreed, but it's something. My daughter overheard the conversation. It's enough, she said quietly. I'm free. We're together. That's what matters. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the reality of having my daughter back. She was right. After everything, we'd found our way back to each other. The lost years hurt, but we had the future. I love you, Dad, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have. Always will. And for the first time in 10 years, I truly believed everything would be okay. The apartment felt too quiet that first morning. I woke early, making breakfast while my daughter slept, still adjusting to the strange normalcy of having her under my roof. The eggs sizzled in the pan as as my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Heavy breathing filled the line, then a distorted voice spoke. You think you've won? Prison walls can't hold everything back. The line went dead. My hand trembled slightly as I set the phone down. He'd been locked up for only 2 weeks, but his reach apparently extended beyond bars. I deleted the call history, not wanting my daughter to worry. She appeared in the doorway moments later, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Smells good, she said, settling at our small kitchen table. We ate in comfortable silence, both still learning how to exist in the same space after so long apart. She had therapy at 10, then we planned to shop for bedroom furniture. Normal father-daughter activities that felt surreal after everything. The therapist's office was across town. I waited in the parking lot, scrolling through work emails, when movement caught my eye. A familiar figure ducked behind a car 3 rows over, my ex-wife. She pretended to search for keys, but I saw her watching the building entrance. When my daughter emerged an hour later, my ex approached her quickly. I jumped out, intercepting them near the door. Mom? My daughter stepped back, surprise and wariness mixing on her face. Baby, I just wanted to talk, my ex said, reaching out. I miss you so much. You're violating the custody agreement, I said firmly. You need supervised visitation approval first. Her eyes flashed with anger before settling into practiced sorrow. I'm her mother, surely 5 minutes. No, my daughter's voice was steady. I'm not ready. My ex's mask slipped momentarily, revealing fury underneath. He's poisoning you against me. Can't you see that? The only poison came from you and him, my daughter replied, taking my arm. We're leaving. As we walked away, my ex called out, You'll regret this. Both of you. The furniture shopping trip helped lighten the mood. My daughter picked out a desk, bookshelf, and bedding in shades of blue and gray. Watching her excitement over something so simple broke my heart a little. She should have had years of this, not just months. That evening, while assembling the desk together, she asked, Do you think Mom will try something? I tightened a screw carefully. Probably, but we'll handle whatever comes. She nodded, passing me another piece. The therapist says I'm doing well, processing everything. You're the strongest person I know, I told her honestly. Her smile was worth every battle we'd faced. The next few weeks passed peacefully. Too peacefully. I should have known something was building. The first sign came through Catherine, who called one evening sounding shaken. Someone broke into my house, she said. Nothing stolen, but my computer was accessed. All our emails about your case were deleted. Did you call the police? Yes, but without evidence of what was taken, she sighed. I had backups. Don't worry, but this feels targeted. It did. I increased security on our apartment, installing cameras and new locks. My daughter noticed but didn't complain. She understood the necessity. Work became complicated when my boss called me in for a meeting. Someone had sent an anonymous tip about my criminal history and unstable behavior. Fortunately, I'd been transparent about the custody situation when requesting leave. My boss dismissed the accusations but warned me to be careful. Whoever's doing this isn't playing around, he said. The harassment escalated subtly. Flat tires appeared overnight. Neighbors received letters warning them about the dangerous man in apartment 4B. My daughter's school got anonymous calls about my violent tendencies. Each incident alone seemed minor, but together they painted a picture of systematic intimidation. I documented everything, building another file. The police couldn't do much without proof linking it to specific individuals. My daughter handled it remarkably well, though I saw the strain in her eyes. One night, she broke down over homework, throwing her pencil across the room. I can't focus, she cried. Every time things feel normal, something happens. When does it end? I held her while she sobbed, wishing I had answers. We're stronger than they think, I whispered. We'll outlast this. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Daniel, a co-worker I barely knew, approached me at lunch looking uncomfortable. This is awkward, he began. But my cousin works at the prison where that guy is. He's been paying people to make calls, send messages. Thought you should know. My jaw tightened. Do you have proof? My cousin could probably get some, but he'd risk his job. I understood. Just knowing helps. Thank you. That evening, I hired the private investigator again. If my former best friend was orchestrating harassment from prison, we needed evidence. The investigator promised to dig carefully. Meanwhile, life continued. My daughter joined the school debate team, made friends, slowly built a normal teenage existence. I attended every competition, every parent meeting, making up for lost time. During one debate tournament, I noticed a man photographing the crowd rather than the competitors. When he saw me watching, he quickly left. I followed, catching him at his car. Can I help you? I asked. He fumbled with keys. Just taking pictures for the yearbook. Funny, since you're not wearing a school badge. His face flushed. Look, I'm just doing a job. Guy paid me to document who comes to these events. What guy? I don't know his name. Got hired through a friend of a friend. Cash deal. I photographed his license plate as he drove away. Another piece for the file. The investigator called a week later with disturbing news. Your ex has been visiting the prison regularly, more than allowed for non-family. She's listed as his spiritual advisor to get extra time. Can they do that? Technically, yes. But here's the interesting part. She's been depositing money into multiple prisoner accounts, not just his, spreading it around to avoid detection. The pieces click together. They were funding the harassment campaign jointly, using prison connections to maintain distance from the actual acts. Is it enough for police action? I asked. Not yet, but I'm building a money trail. Give me more time. Time felt like a luxury we didn't have. My daughter's grades started slipping from stress. She jumped at unexpected noises. The therapy sessions increased to twice weekly. One afternoon, she came home from school pale and shaking. There was a man, she said, outside school. He knew things about me, about us. Said you weren't who I thought you were. My blood ran cold. What exactly did he say? That you'd hurt other kids before me. That there were sealed records. That Mom was trying to protect me but couldn't say anything because of legal threats. I called the school immediately, then the police. The security footage showed a middle-aged man approaching my daughter at the bus stop. His face wasn't clear enough for identification. That night, I sat her down for a difficult conversation. Do you believe what he said? She chewed her lip, a habit from childhood I'd seen in old videos. No, but it scared me. What if there's something I don't know? Then we find out together, I said. Full transparency. Would you like to see my complete background background check, employment records, everything? She nodded. We spent hours going through documents. My entire adult life laid bare. Tax returns, employment reviews, medical records, nothing hidden. You're really boring, she finally said with a small smile. In a good way. The harassment took a darker turn when a brick crashed through our living room window at 2 a.m. Wrapped around it was a note. Give her back or lose everything. My daughter stood in the doorway, clutching a baseball bat she'd grabbed from her room. I'm not going back, she said fiercely. Ever. The police took it more seriously now. Physical violence crossed a line from harassment to assault. They increased patrols near our building and suggested we consider relocating temporarily. No, my daughter said firmly. I'm tired of running. This is our home. I'd never been prouder of her courage. Catherine proved invaluable again, rallying community support. Parents from the debate team offered to escort my daughter to and from school. Neighbors organized a watch system. The same community that had once shunned me now stood as protection. The investigator finally hit payday. I've got them, he said, spreading financial records across my kitchen table. Your ex has been withdrawing cash in structured amounts to avoid reporting requirements. The money matches deposits into prisoner accounts. Those prisoners have been making calls to numbers that trace back to the people harassing you. Is it enough? More than enough. This is conspiracy, money laundering, witness intimidation. The FBI will be very interested. We turned everything over to law enforcement. The investigation moved quickly once federal authorities got involved. Prison calls were subpoenaed, financial records examined, connections traced. My ex was arrested at her job, let out in handcuffs while co-workers watched. The news spread quickly through our old social circles. Catherine kept me updated on the community reaction. Shock, disbelief, but also a growing understanding of the truth. My daughter handled the news quietly. I knew she was helping him, she said. The visits were too frequent. She never visited that much when I lived there. The trial preparations began. We would both need to testify again, reliving painful memories, but this time felt different. We had truth and evidence on our side. One evening, while preparing dinner together, my daughter said something that stopped me cold. I'm glad this happened. I turned, confused. The harassment? No, all of it. The accident, you coming back, even the scary parts. She stirred the pasta thoughtfully. If none of this happened, I'd still be living a lie, still being hurt. Now I'm free, and I have my real dad. I hugged her tightly, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The investigation revealed more than we'd expected. My former best friend had a whole network inside prison, built through his manipulative charm and my ex's money. They'd planned everything, hoping to break us psychologically and force my daughter back into their control, but they'd underestimated us. Every attack had made us stronger, more united. The community that once believed their lies now saw the truth clearly. A month before the trial, I received a letter from prison. Not anonymous this time. He'd signed it. The handwriting was neat, controlled, but the words seethed with rage. You destroyed my life, it read. I gave that ungrateful brat everything, and you poisoned her against me. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I'll get out eventually, and when I do, you'll pay for every day I've spent in here. I added it to the evidence file. Threats from prison would only extend his sentence. My daughter read it once, then handed it back. He still doesn't get it, she said sadly. He thinks love is ownership. That's why he'll always lose. Her insight amazed me. Despite everything she'd endured, she'd emerged wise beyond her years. The trial date approached. We prepared with prosecutors, reviewing testimony and evidence. My daughter remained steady, determined to speak her truth. Are you scared? I asked the night before. No, she said firmly. I've been scared for 10 years. I'm done with fear. As we drove to the courthouse that morning, sunrise painting the sky pink and gold, I felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, but a transformation. We'd survived the worst they could throw at us. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Ready? I asked, parking the car. She squeezed my hand. Ready. We walked into the courthouse side by side, prepared for the final battle. Behind us lay months of harassment, intimidation, and fear. Ahead waited justice, closure, and the promise of a peaceful future. The security checkpoint loomed before us, officers checking bags and IDs. As we approached, I noticed familiar faces in the lobby. Catherine, supportive neighbors, even my boss. They'd come to show solidarity. My daughter noticed too, her spine straightening with renewed confidence. We weren't alone anymore. We had truth, evidence, and a community that finally saw clearly. The elevator doors opened, ready to carry us to the courtroom. As we stepped inside, my daughter looked up at me with those green eyes so like my own. After this is over, she said, can we take a vacation? Somewhere quiet, just us? Anywhere you want, I promised. The doors closed, lifting us toward the confrontation we'd both been preparing for. Win or lose, we'd already reclaimed what mattered most, each other. The elevator ascended slowly, each floor marking another heartbeat in my chest. My daughter's hand remained steady in mine, her grip firm and determined. The courtroom waited on the 7th floor, and with it, the culmination of everything we'd fought for. The doors opened to reveal a packed hallway. Reporters clustered near the courtroom entrance, their cameras and microphones ready. Word had spread about the case, the community's interest piqued by the dramatic arrest at the school event. I pulled my daughter closer, shielding her from the attention. A court officer approached us. The prosecutor wants to speak with you both before we begin, he said, gesturing toward a side room. Inside, the lead prosecutor, a woman named Osamantha Chen, spread documents across the table. Her expression was serious, but encouraging. The evidence is overwhelming, she began. Your ex-wife's financial records show a clear pattern of funding harassment from prison. Combined with the threatening letter and witness testimonies, we have them cornered. My daughter studied the papers, her face composed. What happens if they plead guilty? That's what I wanted to discuss, Osamantha replied. They've been offered a deal. Your mother would get 2 years, eligible for parole in 1. Your former stepfather would have 3 years added to his current sentence. That's not enough, I said immediately. Osamantha nodded. I agree, but trials are unpredictable. This guarantees prison time and establishes a permanent record. The decision is ultimately yours. My daughter looked at me, then back at the prosecutor. We go to trial. I want everyone to hear the truth. Pride swelled in my chest at her courage. Osamantha smiled slightly. I hoped you'd say that. Let's make them face what they've done. We entered the courtroom through a side door, avoiding the media circus. The gallery was packed with familiar faces from our community. Catherine sat in the front row, offering a supportive nod. My boss was there, along with parents from the debate team and neighbors who'd witnessed the harassment. My ex-wife sat at the defendant's table, her orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the polished image she'd always projected. Her lawyer, a thin man with nervous energy, whispered urgently in her ear. She kept glancing back at us, her expression shifting between anger and desperation. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge McJonathan Williams, a man with sharp eyes and graying temples, took his seat and called the court to order. The charges were read: conspiracy, witness intimidation, money laundering, child endangerment through proxy. Samantha's opening statement was devastating in its simplicity. She laid out the timeline, the evidence, the systematic campaign of terror designed to separate a father from his daughter. She played recordings of prison calls, displayed financial transfers, showed the threatening letter. The defense attorney tried to paint my ex as a victim herself, manipulated by her imprisoned partner. He claimed she was trying to protect her daughter from a man she genuinely believed was dangerous. The argument fell flat against the mountain of evidence. My daughter testified first. She walked to the witness stand with remarkable poise, sworn in with a steady voice. Samantha guided her through the questions gently but thoroughly. She described years of lies about me, the emotional manipulation, the fear tactics used to keep her compliant. She detailed finding the photos, questioning the narrative she'd been fed, secretly adding me as her emergency contact, hoping someday I'd come back. Why didn't you reach out sooner? Samantha asked. I was scared, my daughter admitted. They told me he'd hurt me if I tried to contact him. They said he had people watching, waiting for me to make that mistake. The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive. He questioned her memory, suggested I'd coached her testimony, implied she was rebelling against reasonable parental discipline. My daughter remained calm, answering each challenge with quiet strength. You claim your stepfather hit you, but there are no police reports, no documentation. Why should we believe you now? My daughter lifted her sleeve, revealing faded scars on her forearm. Because I learned to hide the bruises. Because I was terrified of what would happen if I told anyone. Because they convinced me this was normal, that I deserved it. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors looked stricken. My ex-wife's mask finally cracked, tears streaming down her face. But I'd seen those tears before, performed for effect. I testified next, detailing the original custody battle, the decade of silence, the systematic destruction of my relationship with my daughter. I presented every letter I'd sent, every returned gift, every attempt to maintain contact. The defendant told you directly about the affair? Samantha asked. Yes, the night of the custody ruling. She said they'd been planning it for 2 years. The defense tried to discredit me, bringing up the false abuse allegations from a decade ago. But Samantha was ready with Catherine's testimony about my alibi, the investigator's report showing the doctored evidence, the pattern of lies that had finally unraveled. Catherine took the stand next, describing how she'd been manipulated into believing the lies. She produced emails from my ex-wife detailing the dangerous things I'd supposedly done, each claim more outlandish than the last. I feel like such a fool, Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. I helped them. I testified against him because I believed their lies. I'll never forgive myself for that. The investigator presented his findings methodically. Financial records, phone logs, connections between prison accounts, and harassment incidents. He'd even tracked down 2 of my former best friend's ex-girlfriends, both willing to testify about his pattern of abuse and manipulation. One by one, community members took the stand. The teacher who'd noticed bruises but been told they were from sports. The neighbor who'd heard screaming but been assured it was just teenage dramatics. The debate coach who'd wondered why such a bright girl seemed so fearful. The prosecution rested after 2 days of devastating testimony. The defense's case was brief and unconvincing. They called character witnesses who'd only known my ex-wife superficially. They tried to introduce doubt about the financial records, suggesting accounting errors rather than deliberate fraud. My ex-wife took the stand on the 3rd day. Her lawyer had clearly coached her extensively. She portrayed herself as a devoted mother trying to protect her child, led astray by a manipulative partner. She claimed ignorance of the harassment campaign, said the money was for his commissary needs. Samantha's cross-examination was surgical. She produced visitor logs showing my ex at the prison during times when harassment calls were made. She showed text messages between my ex and various prisoners discussing the project. She played a recorded call where my ex explicitly discussed making him pay for taking her away. You knew about the abuse, didn't you? Samantha pressed. You knew your partner was hitting your daughter. I suspected, my ex admitted quietly. But I thought she needed discipline. Discipline? Or did you simply not care as long as it kept her in line? My ex's composure shattered. She screamed that I'd ruined everything, that I'd turned her daughter against her, that I deserved everything they'd done. The judge had to call for order, threatening contempt charges. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. As they filed back in, I held my daughter's hand tightly. The foreman stood, verdict in hand. On the charge of conspiracy to commit harassment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of witness intimidation, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment through proxy, we find the defendant guilty. Each verdict hit like a physical blow to my ex-wife. She swayed in her seat, her lawyer steadying her. My daughter remained still beside me, but I felt the tension leave her body with each guilty pronouncement. Sentencing was set for the following month. As court officers prepared to lead my ex away, she turned to look at us one last time. The hatred in her eyes was mixed with something else, perhaps the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. Fear. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I shielded my daughter as we pushed through, offering no comment. Catherine and other supporters formed a protective circle, helping us reach my car. It's over, my daughter said as we drove away. It's really over. But I knew better. Legal victories were just one part of healing. The real work lay ahead. The sentencing hearing arrived faster than expected. My ex-wife appeared diminished, the weeks in custody stripping away her carefully maintained facade. The judge reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, the impact on a young girl manipulated and abused by those meant to protect her. 6 years, Judge Williams announced, with possibility of parole after 4, contingent on completing therapy and parenting classes. My ex-wife collapsed, sobbing. Her lawyer requested minimum security placement, citing her lack of violent offenses. The judge agreed, but added strict conditions: no contact with us, directly or through third parties, for 10 years after release. As they led her away, she didn't look back. The next months passed in a blur of normalcy that felt surreal. My daughter threw herself into school, her grades recovering as stress lifted. She made real friends, joined the drama club, started dating a nice boy from her chemistry class. I watched her bloom with wonder and gratitude. Every milestone, her first school dance, getting her driver's license, college acceptance letters, felt like a gift I'd never thought I'd witness. One evening, as we cooked dinner together in our small kitchen, she brought up something that had been nagging at her. "Do you think Mom ever really loved me?" she asked, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. I considered my words carefully. "I think she loved the idea of you, the control, the image of a perfect family. But real love means putting someone else's needs first. She never learned that." She nodded, processing this. "I feel sorry for her sometimes, living with all that anger, all those lies. It must be exhausting." Her compassion amazed me. After everything, she could still find empathy for the woman who'd tried to destroy us.